The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Come own the night with us. Stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride as we are broadcasting live from SOR headquarters right here on top of the mountains of central British Columbia to you all across the world. Now, we have a little bit of a funky setup going on here, so our one computer is actually down. The computer that I run absolutely everything on, whether it's Periscope, whether it's the studio, so we had to jigsaw everything together to make sure that we got a show live for you tonight. As you know, we've been building a brand new studio around here, so we are very much trying to get things going here. So just bear with us. I understand there's going to be some people upset on Periscope that we are not there. However, hey, you got a free live show. That's the big thing that is going on tonight. So we welcome you to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair in the brand new SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network, including the Fringe.fm. If you want to check us out live on Periscope, you could usually do that every Monday through Friday night, except not tonight. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio if you want to find our archives. I just need a favor back. What I need you to do is I need you to hit that subscribe button. If you could do that for me, that would be wonderful. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we got a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers Contact TV, and so much more. Tonight, we have what I feel one of the best researchers when it comes to the field of ufology. Everybody knows the name Richard Dolan. Why? Well, let's see. He's on every documentary. He's on every radio show, and this one for the first time, which makes me very excited. He's a keynote speaker at every event he goes to. Why? Because the contacts that he has made, not only with fellow researchers, but whether it's inside the government and other areas or institutions regarding this field, he is by far probably the most popular researcher when it comes to ufology today. And I gotta say, I'm even a bigger fan of Richard Dolan these days, not only because he's coming on Spaced Out Radio for the first time tonight, but I'm going to convince him to get his Canadian citizenship now, because he just married a lady from Vancouver, a beautiful lady named Tracy, and we want to thank her for helping us set this up. Richard Dolan, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. I'm very excited to actually get to see you and meet you and shake your hand for the second time in Vancouver at the end of the month on June 30th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for having me on tonight. It's such a pleasure.
It is absolutely fantastic to have you on, my friend. And you're newly married, once again, to the beautiful Tracy. And thank goodness you went Canadian, my friend, because we got some good girls up here.
Well, I cannot disagree with that. I will tell you, when I met Tracy 2 years ago, one of the first things I said was, "Oh, you're Canadian," and I just felt that was a really neat thing. But actually, what was really neat is that she's so wonderful, and has really changed my life in more ways than I can recount.
Well, that's wonderful for you, because you have to have a partner in crime in this type of genre, because if you don't, and they're not supportive of you or what you are doing in this field, it sure makes life difficult, especially with travel, speaking engagement, television performances, because a guy like you, I mean, every time I turn on a documentary, there you are. I mean,
I'm glad to hear that. It is definitely true that it makes such a difference having a partner that you really can rely on, and who just takes so much of the burden away.
Right, and that is absolutely awesome. Richard, I want to spend just a couple of minutes here, because there's a lot of people who know of you, but they have no clue how you got started in this field. What brought you into the field of ufology?
Well, I actually enjoy telling this account, because I think it really brings home to many people just why UFOs are an important subject. I got involved in this topic about 25 years ago, and back then, we're talking early 1990s, and I was very much involved in working on a doctoral dissertation in history. In my field, my primary field was U.S. foreign relations. I was studying a great deal about the Cold War, a great deal about Harry Truman and the formation of the CIA, everything having to do with the 1940s and early 50s. And, that type of environment, I mean, I was just thoroughly immersed in it. And I can tell you, in the university world, they don't encourage UFOs. But I was in a bookstore, I'll never forget this, and I saw a copy of a very excellent UFO book on a shelf called Above Top Secret, subtitled The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up. And I guess just the way that my curiosity was piqued is what really got me going. I remember flipping through the book and seeing a lot of references to the 1940s and 1950s, which was exactly the period that I was studying. And here was a book that was really portraying the subject in a very serious way, with a lot of documents, at least it seemed like there was a lot of documentation to what he was talking about. And this moment just took me, and it wasn't that I became some convinced believer at that moment, but I thought, what is going on here? That here is a serious treatment, or at least this seems to be a very serious treatment of the UFO subject, and it is entirely absent from my world, the academic world. And I just thought, why? Why is there this discrepancy? Is the UFO subject absolute nonsense? It didn't seem like it in just perusing this particular book. And I mean, look, everyone, I think, in their life has heard some reference or another to the UFO cover-up, the UFO reality. And I think what happens with most of us, and this was definitely the case with me, is that you would hear these things and you'd make a little mental check of it, and you'd file it away somewhere in your brain, and you'd forget about it. But here it was right in front of me, and I thought, I'm going to take a little bit of time out of my life, and I'm just going to determine for myself if I think that there's anything to this or not. I'll take out a month or two, maybe 3 months. I'm going to look through the bibliography of what is the legitimate subject matter of this. I'm going to look at what believers argue, and I'm going to look at what skeptics argue, and I'll just make my own decision. And that was the beginning. This was like 1993, 94. And, that was, I thought, 3 months has turned into 25 years. And what I very quickly learned is that from looking through released U.S. government documents, and then later looking at other nations, Canadian documents, and looking at British documents, and looking at French and Brazilian and Russian and other nations, what became very clear to me was that this subject engaged the militaries around the world in a very serious way, particularly the United States military. And at the same time that the government was telling the people there's nothing to this, I'm reading about violations of very sensitive airspace by objects described as doing things that were considered impossible. I mean, traveling at multiple thousands of miles per hour back in the 1940s and 50s, and with tones of very grave seriousness. So when I started reading these, I thought, that's a weird discrepancy, and that should not exist, and yet here it is. And by then I was hooked, and I've just been delving into it ever since.
The interesting part about it is, from what I've read up on you, you've never actually truly seen a UFO.
I've seen a couple of things in the sky that I can't really explain. That's not what got me involved in the subject. That's true. So I got into this purely academic, intellectual basis. I mean, I wanted to solve this puzzle. Now, once I started diving into this, I had a couple of events that I would call sightings. I mean, they're not nearly as interesting as what so many other people have had, but I would say there were two. One was when my son was 3 years old. He's 22 now, so 19 years ago, and I was with him in front of my house, and I saw a very unusual object in the daytime sky that I still really can't explain what I saw in conventional terms. And then on another occasion with my daughter, who was about 8 years old, we both saw this object in the early evening sky that I would say behaved in ways that were very, very unusual, and I don't know how to explain. But those are aerial sightings. They're interesting. I didn't really have a close-up of seeing the shape or of a craft. They were just unusual lights. So that puts me in the category of many, many people out there.
Mm-hmm. I know as an experiencer myself, I've been fortunate enough where I've had very numerous amount of sightings, including a close encounter on the ground with a landing, a black triangle over my house. That was always very interesting, and I'm not going to lie, it freaked me out a little bit. And that's kind of what pushed me to get back into the radio scene because of these sightings. When you hear all of these sightings and you hear people who have multiple sightings, and we hear people like Grant Cameron saying, we have to get back to the experience because maybe it's the experiencers who hold the true tale of what disclosure is all about. Do you buy that, or do you feel that there's still so much more scientific research that needs to be done that we can't even categorize what people are seeing yet?
I think you put this in a really interesting way. I actually think both perspectives are entirely valid. I'm very good friends with Grant Cameron, who, by the way, is, I would say, really the top Canadian UFO researcher. He's outstanding and has done really good work for, I think, over more than 30 years now, almost 40 perhaps. Grant has a really excellent point in that the experience is where the rubber meets the road, is where this is a phenomenon that is affecting human beings. And incidentally, you mentioned that you have had multiple experiences, and I'm sure you realize, and let me just say that, there was a time, a couple of decades ago, when people like you who had multiple experiences were just written off as not credible. A lot of UFO researchers in the 50s and 60s and 70s would say multiple experiences, you've got something, there's something wrong here, because the phenomenon, in their opinion, was kind of like a random phenomenon. But as researchers in the 1980s and 90s, particularly abduction researchers like Bud Hopkins, leading the way on this, discovering that no, that's not true. There are many individuals who have had multiple experiences and multiple contact experiences. And I think what we saw in the 1980s and 90s and beyond is that slowly but surely a lot of other researchers began to get on board with this concept. And now it's really, I think, widely accepted that there are certain people who have had multiple experiences. But in any case, back to your question, I think there's a lot of truth in understanding like the nature of these experiences to get at the bottom of what's going on. But I would still say that the experience of this phenomenon ultimately still strikes me as a somewhat subjective experience. And there's a lot of objective information that we don't have. And I'll just give you an example. You're in Canada. I'm in northern U.S., right across the lake from Toronto, actually. So in North America, we have a lot of sightings data because there's a couple of websites that will collect UFO data for people who report it. But you go to other parts of the world, there's almost no information available, like almost nothing. So in China, I don't know what they've got available because there's almost no communication. You go to Russia, you go to Asia, you go to Africa, an enormous continent, and we have almost no information about what's happening there. In my opinion, there's a great deal of room for genuine research and collection of data in as accurate and scientific a way as possible. And this includes Europe and South America, for that matter. They have UFO groups there, but in my view, they don't have any comprehensive collection point where people can report sightings with, on a large scale. So we're really, you think about that. There's this worldwide phenomenon, and we have like the most bare bones collection of information that's out there. We really need to be doing better than that. So I think both tracks are important. There's a lot of physical, objective data that we can still learn about this phenomenon, but we do need to be listening to those people who are having experiences.
Why do you think so many ufologists, especially up and coming, Richard, maybe on that B, C, and D tier level, if we put people like you and Grant and Steve Bassett and others on the A level, why do you think they are so quick to shut down the experiencer? Do you think it's trying to gain credibility on their end, or do you think it's just a matter of skepticism? What's your take?
Well, I'm not sure that I would have said that in the way that you said this. That's interesting that you have that perspective. Maybe you're right. I know a number of younger UFO researchers who do seem to take the experiencer, to take experience contact somewhat seriously. But it could be. I remember when I broke into this field about 20 years ago, I was known as a very, very nuts and bolts, hardcore, just the facts type of researcher. And indeed, that is exactly how I explicitly made sure to portray myself, especially in public. Now, as the years went by, the thing about the UFO subject is it's really difficult to just limit yourself to one perspective on this. This is a very, very complex phenomenon. And for myself, I've seen a kind of a definite growth and development in my own perception toward this. So it might just be a matter of experience and maturity, after enough years to realize that there is some serious strangeness going on with this, and it just won't do, in my opinion, to see this in a purely nuts and bolts aspect. In other words, to purely physical, as these are beings from elsewhere, presumably from another planet, coming in, technological craft from elsewhere, interacting with our planet. That, I think, is very likely part of what's going on, and that may be the core of what's going on. But even so, they're operating with a kind of physics and technology that is so far beyond us that they appear almost magical. So to answer, I don't have an answer to your question. It's a very good question, and I think from my point of view, I need to study it more and really think about it. Well, you've given me something to think about.
Well, let me rephrase it this way, because a lot of people, I believe, Richard, and I'm sure you would agree, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people are trying to put scientific answers to something that really we can't explain the science around. And that's where I think a lot of the difficulty is. It's much like trying to put, humanizing this topic when we don't even know what the hell we're dealing with.
Well, I've surely spent many, many years trying to do exactly what you're saying. So I get it. In other words, trying to understand this scientifically to the best extent possible. And, I have a lot of sympathy for that approach. I absolutely do. We're confronting a phenomenon that frankly is not supposed to exist. It's not supposed to exist that these beings from elsewhere are here. And then, of course, we're met on top of that with with obfuscation and secrecy, cover-up from responsible authorities who are, in my opinion, deliberately hiding information from us, making it more difficult for us to understand what it is that we're dealing with. So yeah, I think that there's an instinct that most of us have to want to make this comprehensible. The best analogy I think of it these days is that of us being fish in a pond. And by that I simply mean, if you look at fish in a pond, they live in the water and they swim around and they're fishing. That's all they know. They don't know about land. They don't know about air above the water. They don't know about the sky and the clouds and the stars and the moon. Because, well, they're fish. That's their world. And yet people can come into that pond. And when a person comes into that pond, the fish have no idea what they're dealing with. And I would submit that we have a pond. Our pond is our space-time reality. That is the fact that our minds organize reality in terms of space and time. And that's a hard thing to get around because physicists now will tell us that space and time are not precisely what our minds are telling us. The time doesn't just go like the cosmic clock that just keeps ticking the same rate over and over. That's not true. And space is woven into the fabric of time. We call it the space-time fabric. And our common sense doesn't understand this, but what I'm saying is that I believe that there are beings who have understood how, in a way, to master space-time physics and space-time reality in a way that we don't do. And so when they interact in our reality, we're, I believe, somewhat at a loss of how to deal with that in the way that they deal with it. And so I think this is the problem that a lot of people might be having when they try to explain all of this in a strictly scientific way. If you're a scientist, the way that science works is you're a scientist, you're in charge of your experiment. Let's say you're studying a virus. Well, you put the virus on a little petri dish or however you do it, you study it, and the presumption is that you're in control of that experiment. But what if we're not in control of this experiment? So what if we're trying to understand something that has greater intelligence, greater mastery of technology, greater ability to enter and leave our reality? Well, we're not, our rules of science are not necessarily going to be applicable because we won't be able to deal with this phenomenon scientifically because we are not in control of this experiment. And so that's our problem, and it's a hard problem for people to want to come to grips with because we want to be in control. And the reality is we may not ever be in control of this experiment.
Mm-hmm. I understand that, and we're going to get a little bit heavier into that as we got you for the first 2 hours of the show tonight. But first, before we get into that, after all the conferences you've been to, and you literally do, 10 to 15 conferences a year, do you still enjoy it, Richard? Do you still enjoy getting in front of the public and having everybody sitting there on the edge of their seats listening to your every word?
What I enjoy is puzzling through interesting ideas and doing my best to communicate them to other people, whether through writing or through speech. And that's actually a satisfying process for me. Because I do this because I'm curious about this phenomenon. And I've discovered that the best way for me to pursue this is by diving into it, by researching it, and then by explaining it the best way I can. And I'm just very lucky, honestly, that there are people who are willing to listen to me talk on and on about this, because it's really the thing that I love talking about the most.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, to answer your question, I do enjoy. The travel sometimes can be a bit. It's hard to get a lot of writing done when I travel. I'm doing my best, but overall, no, it's valuable because I meet so many brilliant and fascinating people as well.
Does it still amaze you when people come up to you after one of your speaking engagements and hits you up with something that you've never heard before? Or are you at the point of your career where you've pretty much heard every question 10, 15 times minimum?
No. I'm always being confronted with unique and original questions. And, there are certain things you hear multiple times, but no, I have to say, it has never gotten old to talk to new people who have had experiences, even if they've had similar experiences to other people that I've spoken to. For me, I enjoy the one-on-one of getting inside someone else's head a little bit and trying to understand what it is that they have experienced. That's always valuable for me.
Could you give us an example of something you've heard? Like maybe you were just at Contact in the Desert. I'm just wondering if there was something there where a stranger approaches you and says, Richard, have you ever heard of this type of alien or this type of experience? How often is this happening to you?
Okay, well, different types of aliens, maybe not. People who've had abduction or encounter experiences with other beings, I do talk to them from time to time. But what I would say is that most people do not have vivid, one-on-one, direct, experiential, like, I can touch this other being in front of me. I don't think it's like that at all. So what normally happens is that someone will approach me, and if they've had an experience, it will be something that they're struggling with in terms of how they remember it. Do they remember it exactly? They'll have snippets of memories. They'll have, they'll be almost grasping, trying to understand what it is that they've experienced. So I think a lot of folks out there are struggling to understand what exactly happened to them. In my experience, that's probably the most common scenario. There are people who have had experiences with very unusual beings. Occasionally, I've talked about these in public when I'm allowed to. Actually, I will say this. I've been in Vancouver now a couple of times. The first time I was there was only 4 years ago. It was I did a tour called the Modern Knowledge Tour, which was really a lot of fun. We actually drove in an RV from Halifax to Vancouver, if you can believe it. We drove across the entire nation of Canada. It was an incredible experience. When I got to Vancouver, I met a number of people who had very, very definite and distinct encounter experiences. There are actually quite a few in the Vancouver area, so much so that it was striking. One man was an abductee who was very clearly traumatized by his experience with what were definite, in his view, gray aliens with large black eyes. And it bothered him. It bothered him to the point where he, and I understand this entirely why, he was difficult. He was a difficult person to deal with, and it was only because he was so raw. He was so raw from this experience, and for him, it was vivid and I think traumatizing. Unfortunately, there was another gentleman that I met in the Vancouver area who had an experience with a very, very bizarre female that he described as seemed something like a hybrid human, non-human being. That it was just a very, very unsettling experience for him. She seemed human, but then she didn't seem human. And when I talked with him, all I can say is he did not strike me as psychologically unstable, and he seemed very, very calm and very deliberate about things. And I met with another individual in Vancouver who described an encounter at one of the beaches in the area, and I wish I could recount exactly where. If Tracy had been with me during that conversation, she could have told me exactly where this was. But there was an experience of a being, a very strange, kind of almost like a Men in Black type of experience. But this being, according to the witness, walked directly, calmly into the water. Now, I get these stories, and I think I don't know what to do with some of them. Are they true? Well, I wasn't there. But what I can say is that there are so many calm, rational, seemingly rational people out there who have absolutely incredible stories to tell. And in the case of all of those that I'm mentioning to you here, these are people, I don't really think they've spoken to too many other individuals. They told me because they know that I was willing to listen to them and I wouldn't laugh at them. So there's a lot of people out there in this world, in my opinion, who have incredible stories that they carry with them. And in many cases, they're troubled by these stories. Not in every case. But in many cases, they don't tell anyone because they don't know how. Like, they don't know how to tell other people, and they're afraid of ridicule. They're afraid of being seen as bizarre or weird, which I think sometimes they struggle with that. But, there are cases of people who I think, may have a psychological issue going on. I mean, I've met those types of individuals as well, for sure, but there are a lot of people, like, you talk to them and you just know, like, they're not psychologically disturbed. They've had something happen to them, though. And this is a phenomenon that, it's hard. It's really hard to make sense out of all of it. And I don't know if I ever will. But I can tell you that I've never, ever gotten tired of listening to someone's interesting story of what they've encountered. I've never gotten tired of that.
It never really does get old, does it? Because every story seems to be so unique. Especially, I mean, you get people who say they are being enlightened. You get people who are having absolutely nightmarish experiences.
Right.
It's like a Pandora's box with every opening and every conversation. I mean, I've seen it myself on this show numerous times where, and we've seen the arguments even in our chat rooms. All aliens are bad. Oh, they're very loving and enlightening, and maybe they'll make you French toast in the morning for breakfast.
French toast. Well, what I would definitely say is a couple of things you triggered here with me. But one is, there are people who have traumatic experience, and there are people who have transformative experiences. Like, you get both. But whatever it is, like, this is important. This is something very important. And what always disturbs me is when I hear people in the establishment or corporate media who make fun of UFO abductees. And it always bothers me, and I'm just going to say this again. I've said it before, but I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson multiple times do this. Multiple times. And he shouldn't. It's beneath him. This is a very serious phenomenon. Whatever is going on, it's important, and we need to understand it. This is not fun and games. It's something that affects people at the core of their being, whatever these encounters are. And it could very well be that some are really negative for us and others are not negative for us, or maybe positive for us. What makes anyone think that there's just one group that would find us interesting? I mean, my God, we are human beings on planet Earth. That's absolutely fascinating. We should never underestimate what we are and what this world is. We're living on a planet which has an unbelievable diversity of these unique combinations of DNA, of life. Any life form that's out there that has the ability to check out Earth would want to check out Earth. It's an incredible world. And then there's us. We should never underestimate the value that we might have to another species. We are brilliant, we're beautiful, we're violent, we're sadistic, we're angelic, we're fascinating, we're creative. We're all of these things. How could they not be interested in us? We've got weapons that are very dangerous. We're about to revolutionize our entire civilization and indeed our species within the next 20 years with advanced artificial intelligence, advanced nanotech, quantum computing, molecular computing, advanced organic 3D printing. I mean, my God, anyone with eyes to see us has got to know that we're seriously interesting. So of course they would be looking at us. It would be ridiculous if they weren't. That's the reality. So my take on this is that there are absolutely multiple groups that would probably be observing us. Now, one question to ask is, why aren't they open about it? That's the question to answer all questions, and I don't have a full answer to that. I don't know why. What I can tell you in terms of the empirical evidence is that there are an enormous number of sightings that happen every year, thousands every year in North America alone. Just go to the National UFO Reporting Center and the MUFON database, and you're talking 10 to 15,000 sightings, raw reports every year. That they're not all alien craft, I'm sure, but there's a lot that people are seeing. So there's a lot going on. There are many people who are having a range of encounter experiences, and we need to take them seriously. So whatever that means, like why they're not landing on the White House lawn and saying, "Take me to your leader," don't know. But like I could imagine, it might be difficult for them. Maybe their psychology is so utterly different from ours that it would be impossible actually to communicate with them in a meaningful way. It would be like us studying gorillas in Central Africa and going up to the dominant gorilla there and saying, "Hi, my name's Richard Dolan. I'd like to establish diplomatic relations with you." Like maybe that would be a ridiculous idea, right? So maybe they wouldn't do that either. So maybe there are reasons why they're not landing on the White House lawn. And I think that's probably the case. So I don't have all the answers, but what I try to do is look at the evidence as best I can, and based on that, come up with a couple of theories, and that's really the best that I can do.
Richard, do you think that there is a major cover-up going on, or do you think that people like Luis Elizondo and the To the Stars Academy are just as puzzled about this phenomena as we are, as maybe amateur citizens who are investigating this, or somebody like you or Grant? Or is the cover-up much deeper than what we think?
I think it's a deep cover-up. I believe that since the 1940s, at the least, there have been crash retrievals of these objects. And that makes it a deep cover-up. So it's not just a matter of the government flailing its arms and saying, "Wow, we don't really know what this is. It's really interesting. We're as puzzled as you are." No, sorry, not buying that one. All right, it's not credible. There are too many good accounts of not just crash retrievals of UFOs, but of, I think, very, very strong testimony, persuasive testimony going back decades, of individuals who've had various types of experiences with, guarding dead alien bodies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or autopsying alien beings back in the 1970s and 60s. I'm going through research of a number of good researchers, people like Leonard Stringfield and Stanton Friedman. We're going back decades. So they've been collecting these types of accounts for a long, long time. I'm not even getting into the contemporary claims that some people are making. I'm talking about what researchers have been finding for a long, long time that lead me to conclude that there is absolutely a crash retrieval program that's been in place to study non-human technology and to hide the results and to classify the results and to classify the science when it's convenient to do so, when necessary. And to study the alien biology as well. So to me, that's a deep cover-up. Now, that doesn't mean that these individuals know everything that's going on. They probably don't. But they've got confirmation, I would argue, of much more than what we have. And that's an undermining of our government. Governments are supposed to exist for the people these days. That's what we tell ourselves. We have democratic institutional forms that require governments to be responsive to people. And so when they're not, then in my view, that's a problem. And that's not the kind of world I want to live in. I want a world where the government responds to me, responds to us as citizens. So yeah, I think the cover-up goes deep. I don't think they have every answer, but I think they've got some answers, and we ought to know about them.
Richard, a moment ago you had mentioned about the weaponry that the aliens might find interesting with us, and it reminds me of Tom DeLonge when he was talking with Joe Rogan, which I'm sure you've watched ad nauseum a few times to nitpick it to death like the rest of us. But Tom has stated in there that we need to put nuclear weapons in space because all aliens are bad, all aliens are evil, and we got to protect ourselves. And for me, I'm thinking, okay, if you take the logic that aliens and ancient aliens have been here for centuries, millennia, I don't think they're going to wait until we have nukes or any type of advanced weaponry to finally invade when they could have got us with muskets 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think trying to make a political argument about this is really not the best idea. So Tom took the opposite argument that Stephen Greer took 17 years ago at his disclosure press conference in 2001, where, if you remember, he argued that we needed to de-weaponize space because the extraterrestrials all are friendly, and we know they're friendly, he said, because they would have destroyed us by now if they weren't. And I would beg to differ from that conclusion as well. Just because they haven't destroyed us doesn't mean that they're necessarily friendly. But similarly, I think, arguing, in such a strident, definitive way that we have to have nukes in space to protect ourselves. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's unwise. It's really not. It's not a good idea to make definitive political policy decisions, or to think that you can make a definitive policy decision of this phenomenon based on what we know. I really firmly believe that. The problem is that we don't really have enough information out publicly. Not Tom DeLonge, not Stephen Greer, not me, not anyone. And unfortunately, it's because we don't have all the data available to us, because there is a cover-up going on. So we're really looking at this somewhat blind, and we're just making our best guess. When I meet people who have what seem to be definitive positions on this, I just think it's unfortunate, because I know for myself, I've been looking at this for 25 years, and as deep a way as I'm able to, and I mean, I've got my own limitations, I'm not perfect, but I've thrown myself into this, and there's still so much that I don't know, and I wonder, how is it that someone else thinks that they can just get to the bottom of this so quickly? I don't get that. So I hesitate. I've always hesitated to make definitive statements about any aspect of this phenomenon, except to say it's real, they're here, whoever they are, they're here, and it's important. And we need to have an open public conversation about it.
So leading into the To the Stars Academy, do they fear you? Not as people, Richard, but with their antics and their actions so far, which many are thinking are actually quite questionable.
Well, I don't think they fear me. I want to help them, if it's ever appropriate, to do things that make this whatever rollout of information they have to be better. I'm not offering to be part of the team. I'm just saying I want them to do well, and I'm not out to attack them or anybody for that matter who I feel is doing their level best to help the situation. And I actually think that they're trying their best. I've met Tom DeLonge on one occasion a couple of years ago, and he struck me as absolutely sincere and interested in this subject of UFOs. I have no reason to think otherwise. I've met Hal Puthoff on a number of occasions, who has always struck me as very serious-minded and, I think, a truthful man, to be honest with you. And that doesn't mean he says everything that he knows, but he has always he's always been straight with me, and I have always respected that. The other individuals I don't know personally, but I know other people who've had interactions with them, and on a personal level, I haven't heard anything negative. Now, they've made some major screw-ups, and we can call them that, in the rollout of To the Stars way back in October of 2017. We all know about the Mylar balloon photograph that was said to be a Navy UFO encountered by the U.S. Navy, rather. And to make such a mistake is really an embarrassment. I pretty much know how that happened. I've done my own research into it, and I know where they got this. There was a website that they got this from an article in 2015, where a colleague of David Fravor, who was the pilot who had the Tic Tac UFO encounter, one of his colleagues was really interested in Fravor's UFO story and wrote about it back in 2015, a couple of years ago. Good article, incidentally, on the website called fightersweep.com. And this pilot who wrote the article jazzed it up with a bunch of UFO images, among which was this Mylar balloon, which he just tossed it in like so many people do when they write these articles. The problem was that the To the Stars team didn't recognize that this was a Mylar balloon, and it was just such an embarrassment, honestly. And I'm sure they wished that they never did it, but that's what happens when they're intelligence officials, they're smart people, but not everyone is. In fact, I don't think any of them were really experienced at researching UFO reports, other than Elizondo. But from what I understand, he was the last addition to the team, so he might not have been part of picking out that image.
Mm-hmm. Do you think then that maybe they bit off more than they could chew in underestimating the power or the knowledge, Richard, of the current field of ufology? Because the way I see it from an alternative media host standpoint, they seem to be pushing us away. They don't want anything to do with us.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. In fact, one of the other people that I do know who's associated with To the Stars is Peter Levenda. Peter co-authored Tom DeLonge's book, Secret Machines, and I have known Peter, I've had personal interactions with him since 2011, and I've read several of his books. I have nothing but respect for him, absolutely nothing but respect for Peter Levenda. He is a researcher of total integrity, in my opinion. And I just chatted with him last weekend. We were both at Contact in the Desert together, and I spent some time with him again. And he pointed out, and I shouldn't speak for him. He would actually be a really good guest for you at some point. But he said, look, To the Stars is not looking for UFO researchers. It's not that we don't want them, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to have a conversation with the establishment media. And our goal is, in his view, to have a conversation with, that is the corporate media, like we're talking New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, those guys, to change the base level of conversation about UFOs in the mainstream culture. That's what he said they wanted to do. And so for that purpose, talking with the UFO research community isn't really on their agenda. Rather, having a conversation with CNN, New York Times, that was on their agenda. So we can criticize that goal as we can say it's either a good goal or not a good goal, but that's my best sense of how Peter Levenda would describe it, and I think he probably speaks for the rest of them.
Well, I can tell you this from a journalistic standpoint. I think that it was a cop-out. And I'm only saying that because I know the way the mainstream media works, being in it for 10 years, and I would have no problem.
Look, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I shouldn't interrupt you. I just want to say that
that's okay.
The mainstream media treatment of this subject has not been serious. I mean, despite the fact that the New York Times did a couple of pieces on it back in December, yeah, they did. Washington Post follows up. First of all, the Washington Post is probably the most reprehensible, and I mean reprehensible news publications in the U.S. They're actually worse than the Times, and that takes some doing. And the fact that they wrote about UFOs made me wonder what's going on. Like, what exactly is going on? What you find is that there's no follow-up from these publications at all. Like, no legitimate asking of serious questions that you would expect. Like, in other words, one of the pieces of information we learned in the New York Times article from December 16th was that Bigelow Aerospace was in possession of recovered materials of these, UFOs. That's an amazing revelation. Now, that's something that, researchers have really known for a long, long time, and they've been laughed at by the skeptics and so on. Here comes the New York Times saying, no, actually, Bigelow Aerospace has unusual metal alloys. Well, that's interesting. No follow-up. It's been 6 months, 7 months, no follow-up. The only follow-up that I'm getting are from private researchers who are trying their best to find out what's actually going on there, but nothing from whether it's MSNBC to Fox News to CNN, New York Times, none of them. No self-examination among that media as to why they have been so dismissive of UFOs all these years. I mean, think about it. You know, they were, the New York Times in particular, snarky dismissiveness. Washington Post, even worse. And now this comes out, and no one asks a simple question. Why were we so dismissive, and were we wrong to be dismissive the way that we were? I mean, of course they were wrong, but no one asks that. No follow-up of Elizondo's point. You know, when he said a couple of times, like, they would do these investigations of these incredible encounters, and he said there's really no interest from the higher up. He said it's like the sound of crickets. Why? That doesn't make any sense. No one investigates this. Like, in other words, he said if this were Russian or Chinese technology, we'd be very concerned. And yet, he said that there is no real follow-up from the higher-ups because of these, as a result of these sightings. And I would like to know, and I think this would be a really appropriate area of follow-up for any of the corporate media, if they call themselves legitimate, to follow up on. Of course, they've stopped being legitimate ages ago. You know, I mean, I don't even like to call them mainstream media anymore. They're corporate media. You know what's mainstream? You're mainstream. I'm mainstream. YouTube is mainstream. To the extent that, you know, people still have a voice out there, that's becoming much more restricted now. But what I'm saying is mainstream is the voice of the public, and the corporate media is not the voice of the public. Maybe it never was. It certainly isn't now. And there's a lot of other questions, like no one even bothering to do any kind of serious behind-the-scenes investigations. All of these are being done by private researchers. So the establishment media's coverage has been anything but serious. I think they covered To the Stars, in my opinion, honestly, because Elizondo's the ATIP program that he apparently ran, that information was coming out, and I think that was going to come out come hell or high water. And so I believe that the decision was made, you know, at the high level of the New York Times, in conjunction with some of the To the Stars people, like, you know, Chris Mellon, who I think was the one who really, my understanding is he got the New York Times to take this. But they all decided, we're going to cover this in a certain way. And then the New York Times decided we're going to put it to sleep. And I think that's all that they've done. They've covered it just enough that they needed to prevent someone else from getting out ahead of them. So they could control the narrative. Like the narrative being that the program ended in 2012 as part of the narrative.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yet, we know it all didn't. I mean, I found it funny right off the bat. We got about 4 minutes here before we got to go to our first break of the night, but I found it quite funny right off the bat, Richard, where Elizondo said he had just resigned from his position 5 days before joining the To the Stars campaign. Then he comes out publicly and says, yeah, I ran this program until it ended in 2012. Well, what the hell had you been doing, Luis?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions here. I mean, I think we could ask some hard questions, but I'm not. Other people are in a much more hostile mode toward To the Stars than I am. I'm in a questioning mode, but I'm questioning and would like to get some answers. And it's still early enough in the game that I think that we can get some answers. You know, the official statement from Lavenda that I just heard over the weekend was, he said they're not holding anything back. That's all the Pentagon. So they're trying to get the Pentagon to declassify these things. This is what they're saying. And by the way, you know, all the clips that have come out are only short versions of much longer clips that most of which have not been declassified. And that's according to Lavenda, and I have no reason to doubt him, that's all Pentagon decision. That's To the Stars has nothing to do with that.
Do you think that they are, how can I put this? Do you think that they are trying to push the agenda that they are the ones who are, you know, going to be the only ones who could bring some sort of truth to this? Is it about ego more than anything now?
I would not doubt that in the least, and I think that's probably just a normal thing. I also suspect that there's a connection with Robert Bigelow here that no one has really been digging up. So, in other words, I would be surprised, actually, if Robert Bigelow had nothing to do with this right now. I mean, he's a contractor who's had a lot of preferred relationships with the Pentagon, and it could very well be one word that I had heard that came to me, and I don't doubt this, is that one of the missions that they have is to get Congress, U.S. Congress, to open up some funding for research and development for some of their technologies so that they could get some very, very lucrative patents out of it. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. It's just a theory, but hey, everyone wants a piece of the U.S. federal gravy train, and if you can get free tax dollars for your R&D, then to patent exotic technologies based on what you've acquired from UFOs, well then, yes, absolutely, they would probably want to do that, and I would not be surprised if that were part of the equation. But I don't have confirmation of that. This is just what came to me from one source.
It just adds to the rabbit hole, doesn't it?
Well, we're dealing not just with an unusual phenomenon, but we're dealing with money and power.
That is true.
And so when you deal with all of those things, it's going to be a variety of rabbit holes for sure. And it's up to people like us, honestly, to do our best to use as much logic and reason and calm rationality and analysis to try to understand what's going on.
Richard, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Richard Dolan is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I know we're having a little bit of audio problem. We have literally, put duct tape and glue and zap straps on everything today to get a show going. So I do know that there is a little bit of audio issue. It's sounding a little crackly, but that's okay. We got a show going. Richard's going to be with us for one more hour tonight. Then Amy on the radio is going to join us in hour number 3. Amy Martin, who is up here in Canada, sitting in the studio beside me. She needs a Tim Hortons ice cap, though. I will say that. You're listening to Space Out Radio. We'll be back right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at SpacedOutRadio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Glad to have you with us. Tomorrow night and Sunday on the programs, Joe Roop will be in for Spaced Out Saturdays and Tessa Nicole Thomas for Spaced Out Sundays. They get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I'm going to be finding my Zen and my Chi in the British Columbia wilderness here, So I will be back on Monday, and I guarantee you it will be a brand new sound that is going to sound very, very beautiful. I hope you all join us, because it's going to be absolutely stunning. Usually you can catch us on Periscope every Monday through Friday night, but due to our technical difficulties here in the studio, we couldn't go to Periscope tonight. I do apologize to that. We will be back on Periscope Monday, and on Tuesday, it's going to be a great show because we're going to keep on going smooth. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio if you want to hear our archives, and they are for free. Just do me the favor. Hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Mollycoddle. Mollycoddle is our password for tonight, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to check out our website, spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. We have one more hour tonight with the legendary researcher Richard Dolan, who will be speaking at the Alien Cosmic Expo in Toronto, Ontario, June 22nd to 24th, and then in Vancouver on June 30th, and I'm going to be at that event. I'm not speaking, but I'm going to be at that event hanging out, schmoozing, handing out some Spaced Out Radio stickers and some cards and, shaking a few hands. I'm going to really appreciate meeting all of you if you're on the West Coast for that. Richard, welcome back to the show.
Hi, I'm just so excited to be on this show again with you. I'm having such a great time with you, so thanks for having me back.
Oh, no problem. It's absolutely appreciative. And when we get our new audio set up, Richard, I would love to have you back, because I think our audience is going to deserve a little bit more from me on my end. So I do apologize, but the main thing is, I'd love to be able to get you back when we're sounding great, because, I know our audience would love to hear everything running smoothly and professionally.
Thank you, Dave. From my end over here, you sound great, and I'm assuming that people are having no problem hearing us, so all is well.
Excellent. Richard, right before the break, we were talking about the To the Stars Academy and everything, and I just want to shift focus here for a second, because you have a couple of important engagements coming up in Canada over the next couple of weeks here, and I'm excited to meet you in Vancouver. I will not be in Toronto because we're getting the new studio all set up here, and I just don't have time to get out to Toronto. But tell us about the Alien Cosmic Expo and the new event, I believe it's Architects for a New Paradigm.
That's right.
In Vancouver.
Yeah, these are both actually really amazing things that are going on in Canada. So the Alien Cosmic Expo, that's on the eastern side. That's by Toronto. Anyone in that area can go to this. I'm kind of blown away by the people that they've gathered together to speak at this. I'm honored to be there. There's, my goodness, Linda Moulton Howe and Stanton Friedman, who will very possibly be making his final, or one of his final public appearances at this event. But in addition to that, some outstanding Canadian researchers. I think I saw Grant Cameron at this event. And I know that Chris Stiles, and a lot of people don't know Chris Stiles as well. He's the foremost researcher of the Shag Harbor UFO incident that took place in Canada. I see Mark Lemeroux, who I also have met. He's, I think Mark is out of, Charles, out of the Vancouver area, and has done some really excellent video recording of UFOs, and I think he'll have some interesting stuff there. Kathleen Martin, and who's one of the top abduction researchers now out there, in my opinion. Debbie Ziegelmeyer. This is just like, I'm astonished at how they were able to get together so many interesting, cutting-edge researchers for an event. So that's the Alien Cosmic out of near Toronto. I would just say go to aliencosmicexpo.com, and that's from June 22nd to June 24th, and I will be an honored speaker there, so I'm definitely happy to be participating. And I definitely want people to know about the Vancouver event, Architects of the New Paradigm. This is not the kind of conference you get every day. This is an unusual and really super interesting conference. Grant Cameron as well will be there, as he is in Toronto. I'll be there. Daniel Sheehan, who is, I've known Danny for years, and he's one of the most brilliant, fascinating, knowledgeable individuals that I have ever known in any walk of life. And he has been deeply engaged in the UFO issue, among other things, for many years. Danny was involved in the Karen Silkwood defense many, many years ago. He was involved in the legal defense of John Mack of Harvard University, and has so much knowledge of UFOs. It's unbelievable. So he'll be there. Canadian Victor Vigiani will be there. Victor's always one of the leaders in any discussion on what would disclosure be like. Stephen Bassett will be there. George Norrie will be there.
The mustache, yes.
And the whole point of this is it's about living in the post-disclosure world as humanity awakens to the ET presence. And I guess I would just say that this is interesting to me because A, UFOs are real. B, the cover-up is real. So then you ask yourself, well, what happens when this cover-up ends? Because you know what? It's going to end one day. It can't last forever. I wrote a book exactly on this theme called After Disclosure, and I firmly believe no secret can last forever, and that means this one. So what this conference really seeks to do is to raise the question, what will it be like as humanity awakens to the presence of these other beings, and how might that happen? And are we going through that process right now? And I think the answer is yes, we are. So that's what Architects of the New Paradigm is all about, and that's the name of it. It's about, we are the architects of a new paradigm. We're creating a new global paradigm. So it's a very visionary kind of event, and honestly, it's exactly right for Vancouver. Vancouver is the kind of a city where you've got all sorts of out-of-the-box, cutting-edge, really sophisticated people, and I think that this event would be exactly right for many, many people in Vancouver. And that's June 30th. And I would just say go check it out. It's vancouver2018.anpconference.com, or just Google Architects of New Paradigm Vancouver 2018, whatever. You'll find it. And I really believe in this conference, and I want people listening to take a look and just see why it might be worth their time.
I got to ask you a question because, being a Canadian show here, and I realize that the majority of our audience is American, but to have Alien Cosmic Expo in Toronto, and then you fly directly to Vancouver to speak at Architects of the New Paradigm as well, what do you think, from an American perspective, is Canada's role in any type of disclosure movement? Is there even one?
Yeah, I think that there ought to be. And actually, before I answer that, I want to mention there's one other presenter there who is Canadian, and he's from Vancouver. His name is Johnny Enoch, and
yes,
I don't know why I left him off. He's a researcher, and he's an experiencer of some unexplainable events himself. And he's from Vancouver, and he's one of these many, many Vancouver residents who have had these types of experiences that I have a feeling are really going to resonate with people there. So that's another person. But to answer your question,
I'm going to cut you off right there. I'll tell you a little secret about Johnny. He actually convinced me to start this show on October 2nd, 2014, and we went to air on November 30th, 2014.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm really looking forward to meeting him. He just seems so interesting.
You'll love him. You will love him.
Yeah, I think so. But to answer your question, what is Canada's role? Canada has always had this interesting relationship to the United States. I mean, Americans, I can tell you, Americans don't think much about Canada. It's like, we're so important down here. It's all about the United States. And the Canadians have to deal with this. Looking over their hot chocolate and their hockey stick in the corner, wearing their toques over to the side and looking down at the United States thinking, what are those Yanks up to now? But let me tell you something. Canada is not just an appendage of the U.S., although Americans like to think of it that way. And I really believe, I've had enough experience in Canada and with Canadians to know that Canada is incredibly sophisticated and wealthy and very forward-looking. And there's, the thing about Canadians that I've always learned is that they tend to be very independently minded when it comes to the United States. And I think that's really important because on matters dealing with whether it's grand geopolitics, where the United States has got to be the dog that's peeing on everyone's tree in the neighborhood, or the UFO cover-up, Canadians don't have to simply sign on and go along. Canadians are Canadian. They're different. They have their own history. And it's a really fascinating history, by the way, something that I've recently been studying and I just love. So they can go their own unique way intellectually in many, many ways. And so I think it would be a really amazing development to see Canadian citizens taking among themselves an interest in this most fascinating of all the alternative subjects. And the UFO subject still is struggles to gain ground among even alternative types of thinkers or, people who think that they're independent. They'll be independent when it comes to all kinds of things, whether it's all kinds of other conspiracies or politics or progressive issues or what have you. But somehow when it comes to UFOs, so many individuals simply believe the government's propaganda that there's really nothing to it, and that's unfortunate. There's a lot to it, and Canadians have a great deal at stake in this. And also there's a lot of UFO sightings in Canada. I mean, lots and lots and lots. So Canadians are encountering this every bit as much as any other part of the world. And they ought to be interested in this.
I'd like to get to a question from our audience here in the Spreaker chat room from Roger. He's saying, Richard, what if disclosure is not actually in the hands of humans? What if extraterrestrials have been controlling this all along? What's your opinion?
What if? It could very well be true. It could very well be true. I don't know that humans are in control of the process. All I would say is that we humans, those of us talking about it right now, ought to do everything we can to take control of the process. In other words, there are certain things that we can do and there are certain things we can't do. So if aliens, let's just say, are in control of the disclosure process, what would that mean? Well, I presume that would mean they have some kind of control over what the government maybe, or the media, or our official establishment, or they are blackmailing government officials, or they're controlling government officials. So that would make them just like every other human group that's running the world, because our world is run by blackmail and control files and bribery, and it's never been any other way. So it's up to us, the people, and those of us who care, to take whatever control we can over the situation. I've really come to believe that we don't even need a majority of the people to get on board with this. What we need is a smart, dedicated minority who have integrity and who are committed and dedicated to this to make that difference. And that's really how great change happens in this world. So for me, I don't know that we're in control in terms of the grand picture, but I do believe that human beings have the ability to take control over the knowledge and over how they communicate that truth to each other. And I don't see why we can't do that.
With disclosure,
and even if that truth means that we're not in control, we can still ferret that truth out and discuss it. So I'll just say that.
With disclosure, it does come down to truth. What is truth? In your opinion, Richard, with everything that you've seen and everybody that you have talked to in this field, whether they're researchers, government officials, people who are ex-spooks like the To the Stars team, do you think that in the next 50 years we'll ever see any type of truth? And if that truth comes out, how do we know it's really true?
Well, a good question. I do think that we will be further along the road to truth than we are now. And actually, if you really think about it, we're further along that road than we were 50 years ago. was it 2018? So 50 years ago was 1968. Oh, absolutely, we're further along that road. Way further along that road. People in the 1960s and 50s, in my view, researchers had more or less a bare bones understanding of this phenomenon than we do now. So our knowledge has deepened, has become more sophisticated, and we're not in the same place. We're not just spinning our wheels. So I think 50 years from now, it will become yet different still. And the things that are driving these changes aren't simply UFO research. That is one of the things, but other things are just our society. The development of advanced artificial intelligence, I think, is going to make significant changes in our society in all kinds of ways, including our understanding of the UFO subject. People think UFOs are strange. They should read some good books on the future of AI, where people like Ray Kurzweil, very mainstream AI researcher, is saying that your computer will have a godlike level of intelligence, as his word, with an IQ of who knows what, 500, 1,000, whatever. And if that's even remotely true, we're going to have a new dominant form of intelligence on this planet, and if that is so, we might actually be able to get to the bottom of some of these issues in ways that we just can't even conceive of right now. And that's just AI. Then there's the whole WikiLeaks phenomenon. WikiLeaks didn't exist a little over 10 years ago because, well, we didn't have a global infrastructure to accommodate in one way or another. And the reason I think this is that governments, or I should say those cliques that have the information of this secret, are guarding it so carefully because they have so much to gain by keeping it and so much to lose by losing it, that you're going to have to pry it out of their cold, dead fingers, in my opinion. But if they give up anything, it's only because they have to, and it's only because they were like forced to push to the wall to do it, and what they'll give up will only be what they absolutely have to give up and nothing more, and they'll do it in such a way as to promote their own interests to the greatest degree. So we have to expect that with any kind of disclosure. So disclosure is not the end search for truth. It's really the beginning of the next level for the search for truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to end. Let's just disabuse ourselves right now of the idea that we're ever going to get to like the final end game or goal line where we know it all. I mean, we've never known it all. And what makes us think we're going to have all the answers to all the important questions in the future? There'll just be more questions that come up, and that's good. That's not necessarily bad. But I think we'll have some answers eventually. Don't know how, but I can't believe that the secrecy on this is going to last forever. I just can't believe that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Richard, that in the end right now, that there is some sort of theory coming out that, and I've heard this a couple of times from people, where they don't care about our generation. I'm 45, okay, people my age and older, they care about the millennials. They care about the kids who are in their teens and toddlers right now, because if they're able to slowly break them in, as society moves away from religion and all sorts of issues like that and belief systems like that, that it will be easier for them to bring through any sort of alien contact that, yes, we have. So that way society is more accepting of it rather than what we are now, where it is worrisome whether or not people are going to have a game of shoot 'em up the minute they start seeing strange things in the sky or strange people walking around on this planet.
I really love this question. So one thing I would say is that change really doesn't happen by people. Like, people very rarely will go through so much personal change and evolution and transformation that changes societies. That's not how that is not how you change a society. You change a society by older generations dying off and new people coming up, because that's really what it takes. It takes new generations. So you're really onto something here. You know, I raised 2 kids. I mean, I can see how they're in their early 20s now, and I got to see firsthand how a new generation comes along and you know, entertains ideas and concepts and values that, like, you just don't expect. They just come out of the blue and boom, there it is. And parents don't have a whole lot of control over this. So it is true, generations change. Now, what I do think is happening in this world is that there is a definite attempt by those elites who have dominant control over culture to transform human culture in certain ways that are beneficial to them. Clearly, the transformation of culture is taking place to create a docile population, like absolutely to create a docile population. So you know, the methods of control, we're moving into a post-freedom society. Sorry to say this, but that's really what it looks like. So where it's more than just globalization. That doesn't even begin to cover it. It's a bureaucratization, it's a legalization, globalization, where every aspect of society increasingly is being micromanaged by elites, and we can see this all around us. So financial control by the removal and control of economic opportunities for people, you know, offshoring jobs, automation, bureaucratization, regulations, taxes, and intellectual property laws, all of that to control people, and a lot of it's all in the name of safety and security, all of which favor large corporations. You got surveillance, not just tracking through your ISP or your browser, but on every street corner in major cities, and through video surveillance, facial recognition in all public spaces, and all the cell phone apps to monitor your health or your location or your financial. All of this is going somewhere. It's total surveillance. Control through fear, through all of the integration of the media with the national security establishment. We certainly have this in the United States, full-blown, basically creating official narratives based on censorship spin, false news, false flags, to create insecurity, to create dependence. And you have control by poisoning our bodies, by giving us toxic foods and pharmaceutical drugs, legal and illegal, through all kinds of chemicals that we're ingesting that make us unhealthy, that make us overweight, that make us dull our minds. And then, of course, through the erasure of our historical identities. We're talking political correctness. We're talking the attack, which is absolutely pernicious, the attack on Western civilization, the attack on classical liberalism and free enterprise. This is dangerous, dangerous stuff that's going on today, and imposing trivial cultural issues as major crises. Meanwhile, entire nations are just being destroyed. And then finally, controlling us by poisoning our souls. And I mean this, debasing us through popular culture, through over fantasy-based entertainment, over sexualization of our culture, all the gaming and the virtual reality. So this is how you're transforming the next generation, okay? This is how you take their future away and you poison them both mentally and physically, and you give them really no opportunity except to live a fantasy life in gaming and where they have no social skills, by the way, with everything's with texting and no eye contact interaction anymore. So they are transforming our culture and society to create a docile and confused population. That is what's happening. And this is something that every thinking person in Canada and the United States and everywhere else in this world had better be aware of. Because if you're not aware that this is going on, you're going to get caught in this web. And the next thing you know, it's going to transform you into something that's way below what your destiny really demands you to be. Your destiny demands you to be awake, and it demands you to be healthy. It demands you to be alert and vibrant. And all of the things going on in our society are, in my view anyway, transforming the younger generations, into something that's not healthy. Not healthy. There are young people who are awake to this, and we need many more to be awake to what's going on. So back to your original question, I think that in terms of a disclosure take on this, that by creating a docile population, basically a hopeless docile population, I would imagine disclosure would be an easier prospect, because it would be one in which those who are rolling out the narrative would be able to have better control over that narrative and would have fewer people questioning it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long answer to your question.
Long answers are good, my friend. Long answers are good. Do you think then, in your opinion, that today's public could handle it? If aliens landed on the White House lawn, do you think that the public could literally handle what is going on? Because I can tell you right now, I could see the televangelists going crazy. I could see a lot of religious people going absolutely haywire. A lot of very timid, NRA members getting ready to stock up every piece of ammunition that they have, in the bunkers. I could see this happening. And I'm not saying that to sound facetious. I really do believe that if it were to happen today, there could be a big problem, Richard.
Yes, definitely, absolutely potential. I mean, look, not everyone is the same, and some people will handle things in ways that are less dangerous, and other people will respond to things to situations that are more dangerous or more emotional. Absolutely true. Look, I get together with family members at reunions a couple of times a year, and I don't know about you, but I've got family members that I don't know if I would trust their reaction with this very well. I mean, we have all got that. So that's a definite possibility. One thing that I would note is that everyone goes into this with their ideological perceptions. So they've all go in with their own ideas about what they think the world is like, what they think these other beings might be like, whether they're evangelical Christians or, ascension-oriented New Agers who think that we're dealing with the Galactic Federation of Light. I mean, everyone's got their own entrenched perspective, it seems to me. And my suspicion is that, initial reactions are going to be one thing, but living with the reality is probably going to turn out to be something very different. And because, look, the reality is that people have to live, and people have to have jobs. They have to find a way to live with their loved ones and to put food on the table, just like before. And so you're not really going to have a lot of time to be running around in circles, pulling your hair out of your head. Sorry, that might be your reaction. Someone listening might react that way for a couple of days, but eventually you got to take a breath and you have to deal with the situation. And to answer your question, can people deal with it? The answer is absolutely yes. People can deal with this. Of course they can. My God, people have dealt with horrific tragedy, terrible things in all of human history. We are unbelievably resilient. All right? So, you know what? Rome fell. And I say that because, Rome to me was like the epitome of the powerful empire that can never fail. And yet they collapsed. Horrible things happen to civilizations and people move on. They continue. They get up the next morning. They do the work that they got to do, and life goes on. And so if we learn officially that this is real, that there are extraterrestrials that are incredibly intelligent, telepathic, that have the ability to manipulate human beings in ways that human beings don't like. They have the ability to turn you off on neurologically, to paralyze you, to float you out of rooms, to do what they want to you. That's not fun to recognize. But if that's true, we'll deal with it. Guess what? Ancient people had a very similar idea. They said the gods control the world. In a lot of ways, those ancient people were much smarter than we are. We went through this phase with the development of science a few hundred years ago where we thought, oh, no, we're in control of the world. We're at the top. Well, we might beg to differ. You know, maybe there are other beings actually out there that do have the power, have power over us in ways that we may not like, but maybe that's the way it is. So whatever the reality is, the only way we're going to move on to whatever it is we're supposed to be is by learning the truth. We're not going to get to where we need to be by living in some fiction, by telling ourselves fantasies over and over again. You know, we may not like the truth. Often the truth isn't fun, but that's no reason to run away from it. We have the ability to grow. We have the ability to be more than what we are, and the only way we'll ever get there is by learning the truth. That's it.
We usually do on this show a nightly question called The Thought of the Dave, and I'm going to ask it to you then. What do you think the disclosure agenda truly is?
Well, I want to understand the question. The disclosure agenda. So, like a government disclosure agenda?
It could be that. Could be to the stars. It could be trying to pull the wool over people's eyes.
I'll bite. I think that there's a couple of different disclosure scenarios. I think that the fundamental disclosure scenario of those people who have the secret. So let's look at the secret keepers. All right, I think they have their preferred disclosure scenario, and I would say that that's almost like a highly controlled version of disclosure. We might even say a totalitarian disclosure. In other words, I think their agenda, because I think that there is a very small, select group of those who are in the know. They are international at this point. It's not just American. They're in the know, and their number one concern is to roll out the disclosure eventually while maintaining control over the levers of power of this civilization. And the only way that they may be able to do this is by extreme control over the narrative, and the only way to do that is by really creating essentially a global police state with a distracted and controlled public. Mm-hmm. And so that, you know, they'll and probably rebrand UFOs to whatever extent they can to soften the impact. And you were kind of leading into this with one of your questions earlier with transforming the culture. So I think that's the preferred scenario of disclosure. You can call it fascist disclosure if you want. There's another kind of disclosure that very well could happen, and it actually was the primary theme of my book, AD After Disclosure, a few years ago, which I now might call premature disclosure. That is accidental disclosure. You know, something happens, a sighting that no one can explain that actually breaks out and becomes a major event, or a leak, you know, that forces someone's hand, or maybe another nation, maybe Russia or China might do it. I don't see that, but maybe it's a possibility. Or some kind of economic crisis or global catastrophe that forces or that enables the leakage of data to come out. This type of thing can happen. So in a premature disclosure, what I see is potential bedlam and anarchy breaking out with no initial goal. Now, there's another kind of disclosure, and you're talking about like To the Stars, and you know, DeLong and To the Stars is really the latest iteration of a long series of attempts at disclosure, which I might call activist disclosure. You know, before DeLong, there was Stephen Bassett, and before Stephen Bassett, there was Greer, and before Greer, there was, NICAP, and people like James McDonald, atmospheric physicist, and, Donald Kehoe, and all of these people going back to the 50s. And for years and years, there were always citizens involved in the subject who sought their way of getting this topic out to the public so that the public can actually get the truth. And, you know, every one of those attempts has met, in a certain sense, with failure, because it's like ramming yourself into a brick wall over and over again, and it's tough because that wall is strong. But that's activist disclosure. You might even call it citizen disclosure, despite the fact that it sometimes includes government insiders. To the Stars Academy isn't the first version of that. NICAP, 50, 60 years ago, had a lot of military intel officials on the board, and was that fake or was that real? I tend to think that it was a legitimate attempt as far as it goes, and they hit their own brick wall a number of times in the 50s and 60s. So that's what we're looking at, and there's always a backstory that maybe we're not really fully getting with all of these attempts, and that includes To the Stars. But I think that we're looking at a variety of different types of attempts at disclosure, and where it's going to head. I mean, my view is I would rather see an activist disclosure than accidental disclosure, and certainly more than a fascist disclosure. In other words, I want a disclosure to some extent in which the people have a voice. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if we end up with a kind of fascist disclosure in which everyone is basically mind-controlled and the public is just told, after they've been toxified beyond belief by a government that has all the cards, all the information, and the government basically gives their version of events to us, I don't want to live in that world. Take me somewhere else, but I want to live here. Premature disclosure, that is an accidental disclosure, that can get crazy as far as I can see, and violent, and I'm not in favor of that either. So what I would like to see, I'm hoping against hope here, I admit this. What I would like to see is that citizens do what is possible to take some control back over their institutions that are supposed to be there for us. Those representatives in Parliament and Congress that we vote for, they're supposed to talk for us. And if they're not talking for us, then the system's broken, which of course it is. But we need, before things get really bad, to mend it and take control over it. To me, that's the best solution, and that's what I would like to see.
Richard, I'd be remiss to bring up Robert Bigelow here. To me, from everything that I have heard in this entire last 8-9 months, is it always seems to come down to Robert Bigelow. One way or another, his name always comes into play. What are we missing here that the public doesn't know about this Las Vegas billionaire who has an absolute, love or lust for the UFO phenomena?
Yeah, without a doubt. Let me just say first, I've never met Robert Bigelow. I've never spoken to him. I know a lot of people who know him, and I know that he knows who I am, and I hope one day to be able to chat with him. I would actually appreciate the opportunity. I think we could have a good conversation. What I can say from my perspective on Robert Bigelow is that he is, without a doubt, one of the most knowledgeable people in the world, probably, relating to the UFO subject. I firmly believe this. He's a very intelligent man. He has been seriously studying this phenomenon for a long time, and he's been in a position where he can learn a few things that you and I probably don't have access to because of his wealth, his power, his access to political people. And so I think he knows a lot of things. He had an arrangement some years ago with MUFON where he was getting all of their leading UFO reports. That was interesting. At the same time, he had the arrangement with the Pentagon where through the ATIP program was getting their reports and their materials. So Bigelow's in a very interesting position, without a doubt. 25 years ago, he funded the Harvard University conference that brought John Mack into prominence on abductions. So, yeah, Bigelow knows this subject very well. And what I don't know, and what I wouldn't presume to speak for, are his motivations. I just can't say, and I wouldn't put myself in a position of stating that I know it. My sense is that he's genuinely interested in this, But whether he has a care to share this with the general public, I mean, he may not, for all I know. I don't really know. I think that as a contractor to the Pentagon, he is definitely interested in being on the leading edge of the next generation of, getting out into space. And if you're going to do that, along with Elon Musk, you're going to have to be brought into the Pentagon's classification system, as I see it. Like, you're going to have to be a team player from their point of view. So that means if you are going out into space and you encounter those beings, which undoubtedly, in my view, is likely, I would expect, frankly, that Bigelow and Musk and anyone else going out there would be bound to secrecy protocols. So it could very well be that Robert Bigelow has simply placed himself into a position to benefit from, the end of UFO secrecy and be a player with the Pentagon and in the next generation of technology, some of which is probably based on acquired acquired UFO tech and science. But again, I'm only speculating. I've never spoken with Bigelow, and everything that I'm saying is simply based on what I think I've learned about him and what it would seem like would be the logical thing for him.
Do you think that he is part of the cover-up because of his involvement in black projects? And from what we have learned over the time is he really seems to have an interest in consciousness. I don't know how far down the consciousness rabbit hole you go, Richard, but there seems to be a real connection between the two, because even when he bought all of John Carpenter's files, it was ones about consciousness where people were flying ships.
Yeah, really good point. So a couple of questions there. Definitely the interest in consciousness. We talked about Grant Cameron earlier, and he's another example of the more you get into this, you really start to realize that consciousness really does matter. I'm at that point where I believe it really matters as well. How to measure this and how, whether to believe everyone who's got their own download is another question, which we can leave for another time. But it's undeniable that consciousness matters, and Bigelow certainly is aware of this. The other part of your question, is he part of the cover-up? I mean, my take on it would be he clearly knows things that he has not shared. Not only has done all the things that we mentioned, he also ran the National Institute for Discovery Science back in the 1990s for years, which was a really interesting organization that had first-rate, excellent scientists investigating this phenomena. He owned the famous Skinwalker Ranch, basically a virtual portal for all kinds of weirdness. So Bigelow knows it all. So I'm sure there's things that he has not shared. So I guess you could say that would make him part of it. But on the other hand, he did go on, 60 Minutes a little over a year ago, and was very, very upfront about his conviction that UFOs were real and ETs were here. So he's made a few statements, but of course he's a private citizen, and that's not the same as a government disclosure. I do think, though, if Bigelow and any other defense contractor is doing classified work for the U.S. military, that they are going to be bound by the same secrecy protocols as anyone else in the military will be. That's my governing assumption on this. And Bigelow may, speak about this one day and say, no, that's totally wrong. But he's going to have to say it's wrong before I believe it's wrong.
Have you looked into the Aviary?
Oh yes, absolutely. So the Aviary is a name given to how do we put this? A group of individuals in the intelligence field, the military field, going back to the 1970s and 80s, who have had an interest in the UFO phenomenon and would talk about it amongst themselves. From everything that I've learned about this group, the Aviary, certainly it's not what they called themselves, and it's not. I'm not aware that they had any kind of executive function, or like as an organization where they did things and made decisions and actions and so forth. I don't think it's anything like that at all. It was, from what I understand, it's an informal group of colleagues and friends who share a strong interest in the UFO subject. The name Aviary came about from the former researcher Bill Moore, back in the 1980s, talking about these insiders with one of his other colleagues, who I think was probably CIA himself, Jamie Chandray, and talking about them on the phone to Chandray and using bird names because he was afraid of his phone being monitored or tapped. So he would give, one person was penguin, one person was canary, one person was eagle, one person was condor, and so on and so on. And collectively, those bird names became known as the Aviary, because an aviary houses birds. So that's how it came about. So, I mean, it has to be stressed that the members of the so-called Aviary, A, did not know that they had bird names, and B, did not know that their organization was called the Aviary by Bill Moore. Now, having said all of that, some of these guys are interesting. One of the members of the Aviary is on TTSA. That's Hal Puthoff. He's a famous member of the Aviary. And, another was John Alexander, who's very well known in the UFO field.
Yes.
Another is Dr. Christopher Green, Kit Green. Another is Robert Collins, Air Force captain. And, there are many others. So some are friends, some are not friends. Some talk to each other, some don't talk to each other. They're just various people in various walks of government who know a few things about UFOs. And in my sense, each one is on their own path of working their way through that labyrinth, getting to the heart of the secrecy. I don't know if any of them, maybe a few, are closer to the center than some others.
We only got about 5 minutes left with you tonight, Richard, and thank you for coming on. But I had John Alexander on this show back in January, and I tried my damnedest to, be polite Canadian guy to him. But I got a welcome to the club from people like Lorian Fenton and Grant Cameron and Melinda Leslie and others, because John yelled at me twice during the show near the end. It was fantastic.
Oh hell! I had an internet debate, a radio debate with John Alexander back in I think 2011, and it was moderated by Leslie Kane, and I was actually very unhappy with how she did that, to be honest with you, because she openly sided with Alexander. And when you're moderating a debate, you're not supposed to openly side. But anyway, it was me arguing against Alexander. I was sick as a dog that night, but he just was, honestly, he said foolish things. So the debate was, is there a UFO cover-up? And I argued there is, and he argued there wasn't. And how do you argue there isn't? It's ridiculous. But he had the audacity to go up and to try to argue this against me. And it's just foolishness. So he doesn't like me much anymore either, which is too bad. I mean, I would talk to John Alexander if I ran into him, but we haven't really. I used to talk to him quite a bit more in the early years, and he would always try to interrogate me on my latest research. It never stopped. And but since our debate, I haven't heard much from him.
Do you think that, I've heard so many stories about John Alexander, and I am absolutely amazed that, probably 6 months before I interviewed him, I'd never heard of the guy, because I'm still learning everybody here. But ever since leading up to that time of interview with him, and then since then, his name pops up in some weird, strange places, man.
Well, he's a very interesting man. I mean, look, this is a guy who goes through his career in the U.S. Army, and he's got an interest in paranormal, parapsychology. Look, that's interesting, and that shows he's creative and he's got certain ideas. But, of course, he's also interested in weaponizing all that stuff, which I guess as a military guy you're supposed to do. So he was a leader in what's called non-lethal weapon technology for many years, maybe the world's most prominent non-lethal weapons expert. By the way, non-lethal weapons are weapons that might kill you, but may not kill you, but they'll definitely mess you up. That's non-lethal. But he's also been interested in one of the residents of BC, John Hutchison, of this famous Hutchison effect, and that's some strangeness. John Alexander, and he's interested in remote viewing, very much so. Although it's funny, he walked up to me one time early on in my career, back in 2003, and after I'd given a lecture that dealt with remote viewing, I was interested back then. He said, "Well, I want you to know that the United States government no longer has any remote viewing operations happening whatsoever. And I looked at him with a big eye roll, and I'm like, there are contractors all over the place working for the U.S. government on this stuff. It's way too effective for them to walk away from it. So the question that I always had about him, frankly, is that he's clearly a very, very intelligent man. He's a thoughtful man, and yet he holds positions on some of these matters that are absolutely untenable. Why he does it, is he intentional disinformation like many people say, or is he just not getting it? And that may be a question for the ages, or for a good FOIA request. Who knows?
Richard, we're down to our last 90 seconds with you here. Please tell everybody where they can find more information about you and where you'll be speaking in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll be in Toronto, as we mentioned, and Vancouver. Please check out both of those events. In fact, you can find both of them linked on my website, richarddolanmembers.com. I've got two up and running websites. One is richarddolanpress.com, where I publish a lot of my books and books by other very interesting authors. Go check it out by all means. And go to richarddolanmembers.com, which Tracy and I have been running now for the last couple of months, and there's a lot of activity going on there. There's the events tab is accessible. Just go take a look, and you can see all of the events that I'm involved in the upcoming weeks and months.
Really appreciate you coming on, my friend, and I really, really look forward to meeting you in Vancouver again. I got to meet you back in 2015, and we shook hands, and I'm really looking forward to it again. And thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, Dave. I will just say a lot of the things that we discussed tonight, or at least that I discussed, felt unique. They felt like these are things that I hadn't really talked about in many or any other interviews in certain cases. So that's always fun for me.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Richard Dolan, everyone. You can see him in Toronto, June 22nd to 24th at the Alien Cosmic Expo, and then June 30th in Vancouver at the Architects for the New Paradigm. Make sure you're there. Come see me in Vancouver as well. I'm going to be hanging out there, just ride the coattails of everybody and shaking hands and being a fan, maybe a photo or two. Amy on the Radio coming up in hour number 3 on Spaced Out Radio right after this. Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all and your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Child grew up
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. I'm heading off into the wilderness to find my Zen and my Chi with Amy in the wilderness, because we're not calling her Amy on the radio anymore around here, or Amy in Canada, whatever you want to hashtag. That's what we're doing. So we're going to turn over SOR headquarters to Joe Roop, Spaced Out Saturdays, and Tessa Nicole Thomas on Spaced Out Sundays, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network, including the Fringe.fm. And if you want to follow us on Periscope, usually we're there Monday through Friday night. Because we had some technical snafus tonight with the new studio, we're not on there tonight, but that's okay. We'll be back on Monday. And of course, you can check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. If you want to check out our archives, they are free. The only thing I ask for in return, hit that little red subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and it is Mollycoddle. Mollycoddle is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, our website, spacedoutradio.com, has a plethora of features for you. Rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Amy Martin is here. And I don't know if many of you out there in Radioland have got to meet Amy on the radio, but she is one phenomenal and brilliant woman. And she has flown from the southeastern tip of the United States all the way to Toronto, then Montreal, and then I think over to Europe, and then over to Vancouver, then up to Williams Lake. I think even to California, then back to Williams Lake. Before joining us here on Spaced Out Radio, as she is one of our great members of our team here. Amy, thank you for coming to Canada, and welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure. I love it here.
So, we're building a studio here. I guess we should kind of let people in on knowing what happened. Now, the technical snafu, I'm going to be honest with everybody here. It's my fault. It is completely my fault. And I'm going to take the blame. And I apologize to Richard Dolan for this. But I'm going to take the blame for this. Because what happened was, earlier today, we had to do some running around. And our contractor, Adam, the Bigfoot guy, he had to put the carpet in the new studio. So I had to disconnect everything. I put my laptops up on our brand new shelves in the studio because we're running off of laptops on the old system. The new system is still being built. And apparently when we logged on, because we got back late from getting everything that we needed, and our main broadcast computer needed to go through one of those ugly, large Microsoft updates. Ugh. And it didn't finish until like around 9:22 Pacific, so 12:22 Eastern. And the crappy part about Spreaker is I just can't flip it over. So we got stuck having to use the old computer to make this happen. But nonetheless, we were able to provide a show. So all the audio problems, everything can be blamed on me, the new studio. But really, it's been about 24 hours of fun, but hell.
Well, see, I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the new studio. I mean, we've got some physical construction going on, but the actual audio elements have not yet really been installed. I just built the PC, just finished building the PC this morning. I haven't even gotten into acoustic treatment. I haven't gotten into putting together the soundboard. I mean, we're just getting everything together right now and getting the desk built and putting together the chair. After seeking everything out today, that seemed like a huge chore, and we got that done just in time. But unfortunately, there's always the Windows issue.
Before we go into more of the studio, how do you like Canada?
I freaking love it. Oh my gosh. Where has Canada been all my life? Wow. This particular area, it kind of reminds me, it has this vibe about it. It's sort of like, it reminds me a lot of Germany and Austria. It also reminds me of the UK in parts, particularly places around Scotland. It's just absolutely gorgeous. You're just driving along the highway up here, and you're just surrounded by nothing but lakes and beautiful greenery, which I am totally not used to living where I live in the United States. Of course, I haven't really visited around the Seattle area, but I can tell you that there is a distinct difference between this area, this particular area, and more the city area around like Vancouver and the metro. This is not the metro, folks. This is serene. It's very beautiful, and I love it here. And I love Tim Hortons.
Tell us about your first ice cap experience yesterday. Now, I told you it was going to be a little bit of heaven in your mouth.
Well, at first I looked at it, and it appeared to have sort of a look like maybe like a Frosty, like a Wendy's Frosty, but it's not exactly the same consistency. And then I guess the overall taste, it's kind of like it kind of has an iciness about it, but then the chocolate hits, and it's just absolutely amazing. I love it. I love ice caps. I love Tim Hortons. I love the scenery. Oh my gosh, and the air up here. You know, everything they say about the air up here is absolutely true. I feel like I can breathe a little bit better up here. It is thinner. So I do find myself quite tired right around this time. I do think that's also quite a bit of jet lag, as I'm normally 2 hours ahead, and I'm having to stay up an additional 2 hours than I'm used to. But it's really lovely up here, and I wish I could spend a whole heck of a lot more time relaxing. But it's just been a wonderful experience thus far.
And we even introduced you to our local mosquito population.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
The only thing that I don't really like is the mosquitoes, but I'm told that season ends at around 2 weeks. Is that right?
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being eaten alive.
Yeah. I live with bug spray anyway, where I'm from. You just have to... You have to put it on. You got to wear it if you're going to spend time outside in the summer. But coming from 100-degree, near 100-degree heat to this area, like right now, I think it might be in the upper 40s, maybe lower 50s. It is lovely. This is how summer should be.
And no air conditioning.
Yeah, you know, at first when I heard that there was no AC, I was used to visiting like the UK in the spring and the early summer, and of course most people there don't have AC units either. And but I thought, well, maybe, I don't know about Canada, but yeah, I can see why. I can see why most places don't have AC. It's just naturally kind of cool, and even when it's like 70 degrees out, it doesn't feel that hot for some reason.
Now, I'm actually kind of excited because tomorrow, I'm going to take you to see bald eagles.
Yes. Well, oh my gosh, I'm seeing bald eagles everywhere. I mean, they're like in my area that I live, you see Cooper's hawks around. You might have seen some of the Cooper's hawks that I filmed. I put on my YouTube channel a long time back. And yeah, you see those types of things, Cooper's red tails around my area, but you don't see bald eagles sort of in the wild and indigenous to the region that I live in. So to see those outside of a zoo setting, that was just amazing.
I'm going to take you to a place tomorrow. The garbage dump. Literally, we're going to the garbage dump. We're going to the garbage dump tomorrow because
I can see the memes now.
There will be literally about 50 to 100 bald eagles there.
Yes, folks, I am excited about going to visit a garbage dump in Canada so that I can see a bunch of bald eagles. But no, really, I mean that's unique. It's something you certainly don't get in my particular region, of course, and you know, I don't mind that. You know, it's just a different experience, and but so far, I absolutely adore this area. And
the trees.
The trees. The trees are tall and dense forests. There are a lot of different species of tree up here as well. And it's just breathtaking.
Are you happy, though?
I am very happy. I am so happy. I am over the moon.
And, one of the other things that we're going to be doing is tomorrow night, Amy is actually going to be giving us a hand at the local museum where we have our 108 Mile Ghost Tour tomorrow night. And I'm very much looking forward to it because it's going to be a great time. And I've showed you around the museum. We kind of drove by it a couple of times. And it really is a beautiful facility.
Oh, yeah, it's gorgeous. I'm going to be taking lots of pictures of that up close. But I do also want to give a shout out to Spruce Hill Resort. That is honestly the best place I've stayed this year so far. And I've stayed in a lot of like 4-star hotels in Dallas and places. So this was a nice change of pace. I love it here. It's beautiful, and I want to spend a lot more time around this area.
I think it's funny because watching Amy with the wildlife, like all the deer were like laying down.
Yeah. All the deer are like laying down up against people's houses. And at first I thought these are lawn ornaments. But no, they're moving, they're breathing, and they're really deer. I mean, you just drive around and like maybe, I would say every 5 houses you see like a deer laying up against somebody's house or up against a fence. It's pretty wild out here.
No pun intended.
Well, but it's beautiful though. I hope I don't run into some bears.
Well, we're gonna go looking for bears tomorrow. We're gonna go.
I don't want to look for bears.
We're going to look for bears tomorrow, and actually, it's kind of cool because tomorrow night we got the ghost hunt, and then on Monday, Bazooka Joe is going to take us out, and we're going to go out to the Sasquatch gifting site to see if we can actually see anything there.
Yes, and I'm actually hoping I don't see anything except for a Sasquatch gifting site. Maybe some deer. But yeah, it's beautiful here, and I just don't want to run into any bears as long as I'm here. But I highly recommend visiting here, just maybe outside of mosquito season.
You mentioned Spruce Hill Resort and Spa. That's also where we're going to hold the 2018 Caribou Paracon, September 28th to 30th, and I think you're going to try and come back up for that.
Absolutely.
Tell people about the resort. I mean, you've taken a look around it a little bit. And,
I've by no means done all the exploring there is to explore this place, but they've got trails. There was the old, you were telling me that the old 49ers trail, the Gold Rush Trail, runs right up into the property. And it's just amazing out there. Beautiful scenery. It's this smell. Oh my gosh, it smells like just fresh fir trees. And the facilities are great. It's just beautiful. They've got a nice pool and hot tub I have yet to enjoy because I've been really busy. But yeah, I think that you're going to have a really good Paracon this year.
Mm-hmm. I am actually, one of the thrills for me being way out here in the wilderness. And literally, you can now admit...
Oh, yeah.
We
You're
are
in the middle of the wilderness.
Right? We are in the middle of the wilderness here. So when I say, we're on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, I'm not BSing anybody. We are in the middle of nowhere. And, it's very rare I get somebody from Spaced Out Radio's family or listeners or anybody actually coming up here to visit this area. In fact, I can tell you right now, outside of Haunted Crew of Canada and a few other people, you're really the first American person to listen to Spaced Out Radio to actually come up here. And it excites the living daylights out of me and my family, that you're here and that you're helping us out build this studio and, to show off our area to you. It just kind of gives it a little bit more credibility that I'm not BSing the audience about being in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, and also if you've ever seen the show Twin Peaks, it totally reminds me, this whole area totally reminds me of Twin Peaks. It's just through and through Twin Peaks. And also, I hear that they have filmed a lot of like episodes of the X-Files in and around this particular area as well. It's just really neat. It's a neat experience. And when I landed up here, there's just this. I don't know if it's the air, I don't know if it's the altitude or what it is, but everything sounds different. Everything, I don't know how to describe it. Everything has a sort of a different sound to it. It's a totally different experience. You get used to it, but at first it's just really different.
It's quiet.
It's quiet. It's very quiet.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that at all.
No.
Even living rurally, I'm not quite used to this kind of quiet and peacefulness.
I'll tell you something strange that I got the that are you okay look from people up here. But when I first moved up here 3 years ago, one of the first things that I noticed was, I wish there was blue sky here because it's been overcast for the last couple of days here. And
I totally don't mind that, by the way.
No, and you know what? It rained today pretty heavily, and our area still needs rain. It needs a lot more rain, but, usually people complain about rain. We're cheering rain on here. And anyways, but when I first moved up here, it was sunny, and the clouds seemed lower. So when you say, like, you're recognizing something weird and strange, because I didn't realize the elevation of us brought us so much higher into the sky from where I lived before down on the coast, that the clouds actually seem lower.
Yeah, and I think it's because your altitude is much higher. You're kind of meeting the clouds here, and I like this area a whole lot, and I cannot stress enough that I'm going to be back here a lot, as much as I can be. I think I've just really fallen in love with this area. Not just Vancouver. Vancouver's different. It is quite different. But coming up here via Williams Lake and this, even seeing like some of the wildfire remnants in Williams Lake, even seeing that being like my first experience of this particular area, I was still just taken aback by the natural beauty and the rest of the area and just the green that's still kind of reclaiming those scorched bits over there. But this part, it's just green, and the water is blue, and the sky is, when it's overcast, but I love it. I love every bit of that.
Mm-hmm. So with the studio here, we're sitting in there right now.
Mm-hmm.
You look around, it's about 7 feet by 15 feet. Kind of cool coloring.
Yes.
Good woodwork by Adam the Bigfoot guy. What's your opinion?
My opinion is that it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I think Adam did a very good job. From the outside, you cannot hear anyone talking inside. From the inside, you can't hear anything going on outside. However, there's nothing on the walls yet, so I've seen a lot of people post online that it sounds like a cathedral. I wouldn't go so far as to say cathedral, but I've seen the cathedral memes and all, and it's got a very bright sound right now because it's not finished. We're still working on it. I mean, we got the walls up, we got the desk put together,
which was about 8 minutes before showtime.
Yes.
We got the desk put together
while we're peeking over to see if Windows Update is going to finish in time, and I'm trying to come up with contingency plans. We're just rushing to finish the chair and the desk, and I think we've gotten a lot done today. It was kind of funny though last night after traveling for over 14 hours and being up for almost 2 days. I thought that I was going to be able to put together a computer pretty much in my sleep, but such was not the case. I put everything together, but I plugged everything. I plugged the power buttons into the wrong headers on the motherboard, and that did not work out. But this morning I figured it out. I figured out what the problem was. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that was done in 10 minutes. So we got that up, and we've got the operating system going on there. I've just yet to install the rest of the software because I'm waiting to hook up the rest of the audio equipment.
I think it's kind of funny that, we had to throw together all the old equipment today to do a show, and then, like, literally as soon as we get off the air, we're tearing it all back down again.
The only thing, I'm looking around here, and, the only thing I see that we're going to be using is this other keyboard. We just added that in, actually. Mm-hmm. And I see your modem off in the corner, but we're not going to be using, I don't think we're going to be using any of these cables. No. We're not going to be using the old monitor or the old laptops or speakers or anything like that. Everything's getting replaced, guys. It's all going away, and new stuff coming in, new microphones, really good microphones, and we're bringing this up. We're bringing Dave's equipment up to speed to match the pace of his excellent radio voice, which I have to say, it's much better in person than what you're hearing right now, and that will improve, and by Monday, we'll see how it goes. We'll just see how it plays out.
Oh, my goodness. It's going to be nice to talk in. And you know what's kind of cool is, because I let you pick out all the gear for the new studio.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, by the way, but...
and it was, but you know where I was thrilled, and you saw my reaction yesterday. The microphone you picked out for us is the exact same type of Sennheiser microphone.
No, not Sennheiser,
or a Shure microphone that I used when I was in Vancouver in radio.
Yeah, it's the SM7B, and it's also the same microphone that Michael Jackson used to record the Thriller album. You can look it up. It's a pretty standard microphone. It's either that or an Electro Voice. Some people use ribbon microphones, but I think that's just excessive.
Mm-hmm. But I'm very excited, and we got Amy convinced our investor to get like a 40-inch television to what the hell are we putting on a 40-inch television?
Well, you've got two monitors, and you're going to have a 40-inch TV, and those are going to be your displays. I actually run a very similar setup at home. I have replicated a lot of my pro audio setup and what I've used for broadcast, and that's going to be here in this studio, plus some. So Dave is going to get the special treatment there, and I'm just really excited to hear what it's going to sound like.
Oh, and we'll be running some tests, because old Dave has to learn the dials. Old Dave,
you're going to love your new board.
Oh, yeah. I got a question from Joe coming on in, who said, is there still a window for Carl to look through?
Yes, there is a giant window, of course, much to my dismay. I would like to put up some curtains, but hey.
We are getting new blinds, though.
Okay.
We're getting nice thick not blue, but I don't know why I said blue. I'm tired.
Well,
but we're getting nice thick wooden blinds.
That's okay. That would break up some of the brightness, I think. Most of the brightness, I think, acoustic brightness is not coming from that window necessarily. I think it's bouncing off the walls, these brand new walls. So yeah. I'm going to work on the acoustic treatment, and we'll get it sounding better.
We're going to have everything set up. And I want to say a big thank you to all of you guys for putting up with us for the last couple of weeks with the tinny type sound and everything that's kind of gone on, because this is a huge step for Spaced Out Radio, and myself personally, I mean, this is officially a career for me. And I'm not, it's funny, I'm not scared. I'm not scared whatsoever. It is like, I just can't believe we're doing this and that we're making this happen. Will there be a doorbell outside the window for Carl? No, but we'll figure out something. But, the big thing is our sound will improve. Everything is going to improve as of Monday night. It's going to sound like you were listening to a talk show host on a real radio station. That's the way it's going to sound. We are going to continue with Spreaker. We are going to continue with the networks that we are on. We're just expanding a little bit.
A little bit. Oh, yes. And this is going to sound completely different. Yeah, we're going to get the noise gates going, so you hopefully you don't hear typing and clicking in the background. So I know that kind of drives me a bit crazy because I love my noise gate. But yeah, I think you're going to enjoy this. You're witnessing history right now with Spaced Out Radio, and I'm super excited. How about you?
I can't wait. I really can't. I look forward to the day when, we have, you're calling me up and you're like, dude, we just signed so-and-so. We're going to be starting there, broadcasting there on Monday night, or they're going to pick us up like right now, or, in 3 months, we're going to be starting on this radio
it's going
station.
to happen. It's definitely going to happen. But yeah, we're going to get I am, just looking at what you've been using all this long, I am just shocked and amazed that you have been able to pull off what you've been doing for all these many years like this.
Basic, isn't it?
It is very, it is the skinny way of doing a show for sure. But yeah, it's just going to get so much better from here on out.
Well, you know what? I have to attest, though, because I worked for a couple of big companies when I was in radio back in the day. So literally, when I walked into the studio, it was flick my mic switch on.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, because we had people running the board. We had people, doing everything else. And now we're engineers, we're producers, we're hosts all at the same time. It's just another hat to add to the title.
Yeah, and just kind of as an aside, I was speaking with a friend the other week, and we were talking about someone who shall remain nameless, who's worked in a lot of television and film, who attempted to do, I guess, their own radio show at one point. And they just did not realize how much work actually goes into radio versus film and television, where you have, a lot of supporting people working on things for you. Of course, there are stations that do have engineers. A lot of stations have engineers. A lot of shows have producers. But now, sort of the modern way, the shift in radio is self-production, writing your own copy, engineering, and you have to do a lot now. In some ways, if you're a startup, you're going to be doing a lot yourself. So, but things are about to get a lot easier for you, Dave. You're gonna have a lot to learn in a very short period of time. But I'm confident that it will just become second nature, and everything's going to sound great. I'm excited. What have you got in your hands?
I want to know
now?
what part number 20 is.
I think this is. I think these are shelf parts.
I think they go on the desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they go on the desk. Yeah, I'm going to install that tonight. But it's crazy. I have one complaint. Through this whole process. Okay, these idiots who design. Okay, where is that stupid thing? Okay, they give you this stupid little Allen key that you have to hold in the tight sections. You have to hold it like on the long side screwed in, and then that little handle. Your fingers
like
are always
purchase at all. It's like you can't really get any torque going.
Who designed this? This guy. You know what? If you look up jerk in the dictionary, the person who designed this Allen key to screw in these nuts and bolts and all this kind of stuff. Like, what's wrong with using a Phillips? Everybody has a Phillips. Everybody has, a regular screwdriver. But no, they got to come up with this stupid Allen key that just ruins everybody's thumbs and lives. I hate this thing. I hate this Allen key with a passion, man. I
do want to give a shout out though to the Serta manufacturing company. They're engineers who, of course, Serta, they're known for mattresses. Now they make office chairs. I have to give a shout out to them because they actually attached probably like a 2-cent plastic handle to theirs, which makes it so much easier to use.
Yeah, it's like
that makes sense.
It
does. That makes total sense to me.
And you look at all these bolts that we still have to put on by using this stupid Allen key.
Yeah, we need like a ratcheting Allen key.
I got to figure something out for tomorrow. This is god awful.
I'm used to it though. I don't think it's I'm used to like really messing with stuff like that with like my 3D printer because there are some parts that still use like tiny Allen keys and it's a giant pain. You eventually replace screws on those things. I say 3D printer. I have 2 of them now. I've got to get the second one up and running, but yeah, they could do better. They could do much better.
Yeah, this is why I like to buy things that are already built.
Yeah, but could you actually get that through the
door
here?
No, we couldn't get it through the door. We'd still need that stupid Allen key to disconnect a few things. But, if you walked into my rec room right now, it looks like a bomb went off in there.
We have boxes everywhere and styrofoam. Oh my gosh, styrofoam and bubble wrap. It's just there's plastic and boxes everywhere in there. I'm just trying to like group things together and kind of get them out of the way and move on to the next set of things.
There is everything. I don't even know where to start on that cleanup process, man.
I don't know. It's kind of like moving into a new place and then just getting all new furniture and electronics and stuff and just unpacking things. Like as I built my studio, I unpacked things over time. I built it piece by piece. It was kind of a slow process. But having to do this all at once it is a little bit nightmarish, but it's doable.
I don't even know where to start. Thank God we're going to the dump to see eagles tomorrow. Thank God we're going to the dump.
We'll relax after we get everything put together. I think that all the audio stuff is going to go relatively quickly because I'm used to taking that apart and putting that stuff back together. So we'll see. As long as I get rest, I should be fine.
I really don't know if I want to screw anything into this desk, like the microphone.
You're not going to have to. It clamps on.
Oh, does it clamp on?
It's got a really nice clamp system.
Okay, I'm a clamp kind of guy.
Yeah, the mic stand will have a really nice clamp system on it. And
nice.
If you like the area that you have it in, see, I don't want to screw stuff like that into my desk in case I want to move or I want to change something up or add a new piece of gear. It's been fine for me for years.
Good. I'm a clamp guy. I can do clamps. But I got to tell you, I mean, honestly, we're only about 9 minutes away from doing the thought of the Dave here, but this has been like such a stressful yet fun 36 hours, dude, almost 48 hours now.
Stress fun. It is stressful. It was stressful when I wasn't getting the computer to turn on last night and I hadn't slept. But yeah, once I got past that, I was like, oh yeah, this hard part is over. All this shopping is, I think, over. Save a couple cables. And
I want to preface something here because I'm getting razzed quite a bit about not having a set of Allen key tools with my drill. You can attest to this. There is enough stuff spewed all over everywhere right now. I cannot find my tools.
I wouldn't even try. And honestly, I have a lot of tools at home. I don't think I'd want to necessarily use a drill because sometimes, like, especially like with these kit desks, you'll get like the pre-drilled holes and stuff, and the stars have to align for these pieces of furniture. And if you use any kind of like mechanical torque with that, it's not necessarily a good thing. You could end up just really messing something up, and it's better to hand tighten these things and go slow. But I like the plastic handle on the tool that Serta sent. I really like that. That's been a lifesaver. for all of like 5 minutes that we got to use it after we put together most of the desk. But hey, you know, it is what it is. And most of that's over, thankfully.
Getting a lot of heat right now on
Who's
the tools.
about
on
the
Twitter,
tools,
on
toolkits.
Twitter. I mean, really, Bill Cardwell? Really? Putting a child's toolkit together on there?
Send us some ratcheting screwdrivers with those hex heads and.
Oh my God! This is just terrible. I mean, that thing is just pure evil right there.
Yeah, it is pure evil. I hate these things.
Yeah, me too.
Even the longer ones are.
I'm gonna try and find mine tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because like I'm officially pissed off with this, even though we've only got how many? Well, we've got 5 there and 6 there, and
by the time you find it, we'll have put everything together.
Yeah.
And the rest of this is Phillips said. So
yeah, like how do you see? That's the insane thing. How do you go Phillips here, and I'm just gonna say it right now because it's past 11 o'clock on the East Coast. Asshole with these things. How do you do that?
Yeah.
You son of a.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even fun. Not even fun. But nonetheless, what do you think of Richard Dolan tonight?
It was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. I think you kind of brought out a different side of him. I think he felt like, he got to have a different kind of conversation than what he has with other hosts. So that's good. He said, "Welcome to the club." That was cool too.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool.
That was. You know what? I didn't even hear that.
I did, and I took notice. I took notes of that.
Maybe he's just happy that I'm taking him for beer in Vancouver.
Maybe that too. That is a possibility.
I have a question for you from Catherine.
Okay.
Catherine does our social media for the show.
Hello. And
she is asking, Amy, what kind of computer is Dave going to be running? I want to geek out over the new rig.
It's I don't know what brand you would call it since I built it piece by piece. I picked out all the parts. It has an MSI motherboard, MSI B350M motherboard. It has ballistics RAM running DDR4. He's going to have that, and he's running an AMD Ryzen processor with, and please, I know that there are people out here that say this is a sacrilege, but this has been my standard for well over a decade. We're running an AMD processor with an NVIDIA discrete video card, and it's all next-gen stuff, so I think he's really going to enjoy that. I've never had problems with AMD and NVIDIA, but I love running those two, that combination together. And the tower, it's a mid-tower case, and it's got acoustic treatment on the inside of the tower. It's really quiet. I see processor, RAM, etc. It's Ryzen 5. I want to say it's like a Ryzen 5 1500. I would have to take a look and see. It's 6-core. I do know that. And the RAM, ballistics RAM, for now we're running 16 gigs, which is more than enough, in a solid state hard drive. I believe that's a Crucial solid state hard drive running a 500 gigabyte Crucial there, with, I think you have like a 4 terabyte, additional storage. And, I think I might end up setting up a RAID array at some point.
And we got a new webcam.
We got a new webcam. And by the way, I've set Dave up with lighting for that. He's going to have soft boxes, and he's not going to know what to do with this. But it's going to look really good, and I hope sound really good.
And we got wall mounts for the guitars.
Oh yeah, you got some wall mounts for the guitars, so those are going to look pretty.
Yeah.
We've also got some LED strip lighting that's going to go. We got a lot of that.
Hey,
it's going to go all around.
You think we have enough for this room? It's going to be close.
I think we might need another roll of that stuff. If you want to do around that border, we could do some accent lighting. There are some options. I might let you work on that
That's
after
not
I've left.
not
Because that's not priority number one.
No. I'll give it...
But you can,
Bazooka
you can
Joe doesn't
really
know
good.
this, but he's going to put that up.
We got all the mounts for it, so...
Excellent.
It should be relatively easy.
You know what? I'm excited about that lighting because, I mean, if anything can call Carl into this, we're going to see that.
I see Mike B. I'm going to call you out, man. He says, always with the AMD NVIDIA mixing. Yeah, you and James always you always like to give me crap about that. But I've never had problems. I've never had problems running AMD and NVIDIA. I know that AMD, of course, they bought out ATI, the video card manufacturer, some time ago. But I'm just not a big Radeon fan when it comes to their discrete cards. Some people are, but I've been an NVIDIA fangirl for years and years and years. I used to run LAN parties and gaming parties, and they used to send me all kinds of really cool swag, and I just love their products. So I'm plugging a lot of things tonight. I'm not getting paid by anyone for that, but it's just my preference. There are other people out there that have different preferences, and I thought they would be a lot more economic and efficient to build versus buying off the shelf. And really, there wasn't anything off the shelf that I felt that we could get that would really match the studio for what we're wanting to do. And I've got it installed. I've got a certain version of Windows installed that should not give him any issues. I won't get too far into that because that's our trade secrets. You want to say it's our trade secrets, proprietary information. I'm sure we'll share later on more of the details of what's going into the studio. I'm really super excited, man. We've got the noise gate, the compressor, the limiter we're going to add on. We've got all the... We've got... I just looked at the power... The power conditioner has a port for a snake light. I don't know why, but hey, I don't think you'd need it, but that's it's neat. It's a neat feature.
Right now, it's about crap happens, man.
Just get everything together. But
we got carpet today. That's all.
We got carpet. We're taking things one thing at a time.
Every day is a gift, man. Every day is something new.
You're gonna freaking love this soundboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a PreSonus 1602. And oh my gosh, it's what I run at home. I love my 1602. It's been very good to me over the years. So it's really pretty.
All in all, before we go to the thought of the Dave, I'm curious. Your overall view of Canada so far, once again.
Win. Total win. I love Canada. There, I said it.
Oh, it feels good. Victory once again. Trump's pissed off.
I'm a traitor.
Trump's pissed off that we burned down the White House in 1812, and now we're stealing Amy on the radio.
Oh, there are things I wish I could say if you weren't on terrestrial right now, and if we had that delay installed, it would. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try to say it, but I would probably say it if it were my show, and I'd pay the fee. I'd pay the price. It'd be worth it.
All right, we're going to go to the thought of the Dave right now. Are you tired? Oops. It's a rough night. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where during the day we put a question out on Facebook and Twitter, and then we wait for your participation, because we love the audience participation when it comes to the Thought of the Dave. So, Thought of the Dave question today is, what do you think the disclosure agenda truly is? Makes you think, makes you wonder. But before we get to that, every now and again, and this has been happening a lot lately. So, this listener, literally, her name is Mary. I'm not going to give her last name out, but Mary decides to, you get on Facebook Messenger, and all of a sudden a message pops up. So, I go and check it out. because I like to communicate with our listeners. And Mary today decides to say, look what I just found for your front lawn. Your favorite gnomes. And they're zombie gnomes. Now I'm thinking here, out of everything, I've never met this person. She's never participated in the chat rooms.
I don't know, maybe she has.
And she's gnoming the hell out of me on a private message. So I said, wow, nice to meet you too. Thank you. She goes, love your show. Well, I can take that. If she loves the show, I can take the whole gnome thing. But this whole gnome thing now, it's getting eerie because I even went over for dinner to Bazooka Joe's the other night. You know what he did? He lined up a bunch of gnomes right by his front door. Ooh. So that way I had to go through this gauntlet of gnomes. It's painful.
Gnome gauntlet.
Yes. Thought of the day. What do you think the disclosure agenda truly is? And once again, thank you, Mary, for being a fan and reaching on out. I love hearing from our listeners, so please keep it on up. Jim Mallard from the Mallard Report states, truthfully, I think some folks just use it to gain some fame. Do you think that disclosure, Amy, is more about fame than it is anything else?
I mean, it depends on what people think they're disclosing or not disclosing. I mean, I don't know. There are a lot of, this is unpopular opinion time. I feel like people have been kind of riding this disclosure thing for a long time. And like Richard Dolan said tonight, this has been going on since, at least NICAP. You've got John Mack. You've got all these other people who have been really big in the UFO community for years and years, decades. And, I guess there's been calls for disclosure, and I don't know. It feels like we have an entire industry that kind of thrives, this niche on the idea, the fantasy of disclosure of some alien intelligence being in contact with human beings on Earth and whisking us away at night, and just this sort of romance with the idea of extraterrestrials. And this has been going on for some time. I personally feel, I've had a lot of unexplained things happen in my life, and for a skeptic, a lot of people might kind of look at me funny, like on both sides of the fence, both skeptics and believers. But when it comes down to, this industry, and we're talking about disclosure, who is it important to, and why? I think that disclosure is important to the same people it's always been important to. I think that, you have like all these topics of discussion about disclosure, but I wonder like how long we can keep talking about the same things over and over again and just rebranding it. That's kind of how I really feel. Either something's going to happen or it's not. And, I guess I don't have the kind of patience that it takes to wait for disclosure of something, whatever that may be. I just have to kind of go on, and me, I'm a skeptic. My family's had some weird experiences, and I want to try to find out everything I can in my lifetime, especially while they're around, about what they think they might have saw or might have seen. And I that's what drew me into this subject, and I've been researching these topics for the better part of my life. Even as a child, I was interested, and I'm familiar with all the popular players, but how has the message changed? What new information do we have? And you see all this stuff like with To the Stars. Is this the same song and dance, just rebranded some years later? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm not totally impressed with the body of evidence or lack thereof that's been presented. I'm just, I don't feel like there is not enough evidence, if you're going to look at it skeptically, to support, these claims. And, you also have to ask what's being claimed, or is information just kind of being put out there and allowing other people to draw their own conclusions. And I think it's important for everyone to draw their own conclusions, but, what are you trying to lead people on to thinking here? And kind of coming back around to the disclosure agenda, you kind of have to ask, what is the agenda of these people, calling for disclosure? It's not all, the same type of people, and I think, I think that a lot of people in the UFO community have their own agendas, their own reasons for being there. Some are genuine, I feel. Some are genuine. Some I wouldn't go so far as to say, well, there are some that have been in the past and maybe even currently quite nefarious when it comes to bold claims and people taking advantage of other people, and I really don't appreciate that. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there, skeptics, that care about people, being taken advantage of. We don't like seeing that. We don't like seeing people get hurt, especially when there are a lot of people out there very impressionable. But then there are, other people that I think aren't so much nefarious as they are just kind of in it for, they make money, and a lot of people say you don't get into UFOs to try to get rich. I know that there are some people out there who have tried getting rich off of other people through, the whole disclosure thing, and that's their agenda. That's another type of agenda. But overall, I think that people who are interested, they just want to know what's going on. Like me, I'm not going to jump to the automatic conclusion that there is intelligent alien life visiting Earth, because every other piece of evidence out there, if you want to look for, like really looking for hard evidence, points to we just haven't found it yet. And yeah, I think that there's a strong possibility that it exists somewhere out there. Is it exactly as the way that we have painted it over the past several decades? Probably not. We have no idea. We have nothing to draw from here. Only, looking at, what our planet looks like and our signature. What does the signature of Earth look like? And how do we look at other planets out there when looking for potential life on Earth? I could probably talk all night about this. I won't. I'll let Dave get back to some of the listener questions.
Oh. Did you breathe? Oh my god. I was filing my nails and, writing my agenda for what time I could schedule in a shower tomorrow. No, but I think that was a fantastic answer, to be honest with you, and I think it's the only legit answer.
Yeah.
Even though I will disagree with you about the aliens, because...
I don't know.
Aliens, you know me.
I want to experience it. I want to experience it for myself. If that's the case.
We don't have any closing music tonight. Because it's on the...
I'll just hum. I'll do some humming.
So anyways, let's get to Danny on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. I don't think they ever planned on disclosure. It was never in the cards. Even the idea of soft disclosure has me laughing because it's only confirming what our UFO community already knows. Regular people don't know what disclosure is. My wife didn't know when I asked her just now. A little late to be talking about UFOs, is it not? All right. Let's see where else we can find. Dollar bills, Chris states on Twitter. Let's see. Well, that's Marty warning me to take care of Amy later today. All right, let's go over to Facebook here. Brian, depends on which side of the agenda. If you are on the belief in UFOs and aliens, then you want to have the existence of confirmed official. If you are on the government and black project side, then you want to use it to distract what you are really doing. Illegal stuff. Crimes against humanity. Oh, the humanity. Gail jumps in. Froggy is in the plan, or is in the pan. Froggy is in the pan?
Frog in a pan.
Oh, is that a saying? Is that an American thing?
I don't know.
Okay. Must be an Oregonian thing.
Oregonian. Say that. That's going to be the
Oregonian.
new Cardwell password.
Exactly.
Oregonian.
Heat is slowly being turned up. Froggy is okay because it doesn't hurt so far. When E.T. lands and steps out of his craft, Froggy will already be so desensitized he won't really be startled or have a violent reaction. All because it's a slow, measured disclosure. Interesting. Tim gets the last word. Distraction. A sentence or a sense of something is being accomplished. Want to say a big thank you to everybody for hopping on in. I apologize about the audio, but we had a great interview in the first 2 hours with Richard Dolan. I will be back in the hot seat on Monday because, well, I got nothing better to do. And I got this brand new studio and this career that we are taking place, but we are going to have it all set up. We're going to have it all smoothed out. And I want to say a big thank you to all of you in the chat rooms tonight on Twitter and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, the Veterans Club on Facebook, for bearing with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you on Monday. Enjoy the weekend shows. We'll talk to you soon. Good night.